Money and Success by Caitlin and Sarah. Many like to think of America as, if anything, a middle-class nation, where divisions aren't obvious and everyone has equal opportunity. Unfortunately, this is far from true. If we use 100 circles to represent the wealth in America, the top 1% of richest Americans would hold 34 circles. That's 34% of the money in the U.S., and it belongs to approximately 3 million of the 319 million people. If we consider the richest 20% of Americans, they hold 85% of the wealth. What does that leave for the other 80% of Americans? Approximately $13 trillion, or 15% of the wealth. This gap leaves about 1.3%, or 1 in 8 people, below the official poverty line. If none of that meant anything to you, consider this. 60% of the population of the United States holds less than 4% of the total wealth. There are several different explanations that people have come up with for this gap. Some look to gender, ethnicity, location, education level, or the class of one's parents. The truth is, it's a combination of all of these reasons. You see, the class of your parents helps determine where you live. Where you live determines where you go to school. Where you go to school determines the quality of education you get while it's free and works together with the class of your parents, ethnicity, and your gender to determine the money you have or the scholarships you receive to go to college. Whenever your education is over, that level, along with your gender, ethnicity, and location, determine the jobs that are available to you. Does that give everyone an equal opportunity? Absolutely not. Some may still doubt the impact of these factors. For example, location. Location may not seem like a big deal because we have multiple modes of transportation, right? But location is a big deal. Certain places have a higher cost of living than others. Some locations have a strong sense of community, and these communities have drastically different ideals. The cost of living and community ideals is what sets rich locations apart from poorer locations. The richer locations not only have different ideals, but they have better facilities, better schools, less crime, and better roads. In the New American Divide, Murray calls these extremely rich areas super zips. Median family income and percentage of adults with secondary education is far above other areas, and diversity is lower. The top 10 super zips are found in Illinois, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and California. Notice that the only ones in the Midwest are in the northern shores of Chicago. These super zips are not a new concept. Their equivalents have existed as long as famously elite neighborhoods from the 1960s in New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Beverly Hills. The New American Divide also compares two towns, Belmont and Fishtown. No one in Fishtown has any education higher than a high school diploma, while in Belmont everyone has at least a bachelor's degree. Murray argues that this New American Divide is not grounded in race or ethnicity because 20% of the white population from ages 30 to 49 qualify for Belmont, while 30% qualify for Fishtown. This is not the only surprising comparison. From 1960 to 2010, the common culture between the two towns decreased drastically. In 1960, 94% of people in Belmont were married, and 54% in Fishtown were married. By 2010, while both numbers declined, the difference increased from 10% to a striking 35%. In 1960 in Fishtown, only 10% of men worked less than 40 hours a week, and by 2008 that figure grew to 20%. In Belmont, it started as 9% and rose to 12%. In Fishtown, the crime rate went up almost 5 times the 1960s rate, while Belmont was consistently near zero. From 1960, Fishtown went from 9% to 21% more secular than Belmont. All of those statistics show glaringly obvious differences from the wealthy to the poor that continue to grow. What does this mean? It means that money in itself is not the only thing setting Americans apart. It's how that money shapes our clothing choices, the food choices we make, and how we choose to spend our leisure time. While a rich guy may spend his off time in a tux drinking exotic wine at a multitude of cocktail parties, a poor man may spend his leisure time drinking cheap beer in a hoodie at a bar, and he's probably never even heard of the wine the rich guy is drinking. This is an example of the cultural divide we are facing here, and it's not going to be easy to reverse. Timothy Noah points out that any effort to minimize income differences is seen as an intrusion on individual liberty. Any government-proposed action that could give more money to the lower classes has to have some benefit to the upper classes. That is the reality of our democracy run by the upper class. So, what can we do? We can get started on shrinking this gap in wealth before it grows even bigger, or God forbid, we just give up and get used to it.